much to Jackie, and thanks to G-Toast for having me. This thing works. Wow, technology, yay. I picked the good mic. G-Toast is really a special club. Raise your hand if you're in G-Toast. Oh, great. This is quite a few. So if you're not in this Toastmaster Club, I highly recommend you look into it, and I look into it, maybe even turbocharging it more. And I think you have some ideas for turbocharging G-Toast, even more than it's already turbocharged. G-Toast, for one thing, has a budget, which is unusual in Toastmaster clubs. I know that for a fact because G-Toast is probably the only club in the Bay Area that could afford my fee. That's great. No, really, actually, I came here for happy hour. So, awesome. I'm going to be around. You're not getting rid of me. Happy hour is awesome. So, Jackie, I guess Jackie guessed what my opening joke would be, but I'm going to go through it anyway. Raise your hand if you're like dedicated to improving your presentations. You view it. Well, there's a dead zone. Interesting.
Get some scientists to look into this, will you?
If you're really interested in sort of tracking your progress and you sort of view presentation skills and understanding, being savvy about speaking as one of your career priorities. So you're like planning a week ahead to be here and you're, oh wow, there's way more hands than I thought. It's great. How about, raise your hand if, on the other hand, you were just walking by and you saw that notice and it had my face, so you have courage on your part. You saw me, but you saw something about presentation skills and pitching and you decided, well, I should check it out. Anybody do that? Just checking it out? Good. So the rest of you are naturally here for the food. I was told, I apologize, I was told it would be better. I thought we'd have that cool pasta dish, and the roasted veggies. I'll just follow up on that, see what happens. I'm so glad you're here. As you just heard, I do work with pitching. Now, pitching is a kind of presentation that is perhaps more streamlined or more specialized than you will see in a corporate setting or in a Toastmaster club. Because after all, Toastmasters was invented about 100 years ago, and it has a very generic, broad appeal. It is Toastmasters International. However, working with co-founders and entrepreneurs in the Valley for going on 5 years now, what I realized is this pitch structure, the winning pitch structure, which I'm going to elucidate in a bit, offers shortcuts and sort of insight into how to be effective in a corporate presentation if you want to drive innovation, if you want to be seen as a leader, and if you want to actually make things get better. So that's what's on offer. But before we go into that content, what I'd like to do is check in about Gilead. So Gilead is a famous company. I'd heard of Gilead before Jackie sent me an email. But of course I've been following the news more and appreciating, my goodness, Gilead is like a titan of pharmaceutical companies. Am I wrong? Yeah. So it's a titan of pharmaceutical companies. It's a darling of Wall Street. So that's in the news a lot. And 2014, I think, was a banner year for the stock. What else is happening? So you've got to deal with a lot of scientific frontiers, biology. There's the regulatory matters that become a concern, and how to keep the Fed satisfied and how to run that process, and make sure that when you come to the end of the pipeline, you actually have a drug that can make money and help people. Well, that kind of gets complicated. Plus, I understand you guys are international, obviously. You do acquisitions from time to time, which must be a bit tricky because you now have a whole new company you're trying to absorb and optimize, the relationships, get the processes and the SOPs in order. Anybody out there keeping busy? It must be a fun job and the food great, happy hour, but maybe it's a bit stressful. Anybody, is like thinking, I need to come in on the weekend. Or, I imagine that the executives having, and by the way, over half your executives are either PhDs or medical doctors. That's kind of rare around here. So I don't get to be the smartest person in the room, but I nominate Robert. If we make any technical mistakes. So this could lead to that very mundane thing we call stress. Well, how do I satisfy? We got this project in place, we have to do this PR, and then there's this. Then there's this briefing I have to do, and then there's competition. I don't know how much research you guys do, and actually I don't know what all you do in different areas. So I understand we have a cross-section of folks. Some of you are literally scientists. Some of you may work in accounting, you may work in sales, PR, you may work software. Jackie, where did you go, Jackie?
Yeah.
Jackie, software. How big a deal is software in this company?
Kind of, sort of. It's more like statistical programming.
It's more like standard, you say?
Statistical programming.
Statistical programming. Oh, so I talked to someone in this industry. He says the only way you can report statistics to the government, you have to use SAS, is that it? Which is kind of old. Oh, well, more stress. So why am I talking about stress? The thing with stress is that you're all enlightened folks, you're highly educated, you're in an enlightened company, you fund your Toastmaster Club, it's amazing. You've got to take a break, you've got to rejuvenate. And so we do all these cool things. We have not just pizza here, but go out and have pizza with friends, maybe have a beer, that'd be nice. Go for a hike, do yoga, see the sky, watch a movie, all these things that we do to refresh ourselves. Maybe run a marathon. And it works, we feel sort of reconnected with life, we feel more vital, we're like, this is good, I like where I am. But oftentimes what happens, and this is the dead zone, often what happens is that you come back into work, walking into your cubicle or whatever, and you sit down, the stress comes right back. Why is that? Well, the answer is not that tricky. The stress often would come right back because even though you recreated and you had fun and you relieved that stress and did fun things, great, when you get back to work, not much has changed. And you may have, in the back of your mind, no matter how good-natured you are and how ambitious, that, am I in a treadmill here? When am I going to get ahead? Or when can we make some kind of a breakthrough? And so of all those ways of relieving stress, they're great. But the best way of relieving stress, and you could quote Anthony Robbins on this, the self-help
Guru, who knows where to stand.
The best way to relieve stress is progress, victories. Some kind of bump where things are getting better. I'm not trapped. I'm not on a treadmill. I'm moving ahead. People are coming to me for advice, or I'm getting a promotion, or I'm being sent or invited to meetings and events that I get to go to. That is an awesome thing. Anybody watching football this time of year? There must be a few folks. Yeah. What relieves stress in a football game? It's touchdowns. Yes. And do we have any soccer fans? So this is even more rare. I grew up with soccer, not playing it, but wives and daughters. Oh my gosh. So goals in soccer. Man, when your team's behind by 1 and you get that goal, whew, you can breathe again. So it's great to get that kind of a feeling on the job. So the next question naturally is, well, how are you going to bring this back to presentations? And here's how we do that. How are you going to get that progress? Well, there are different strategies. Zone is getting smaller. I'm going to move it. There are different strategies. One of them is work harder. Raise your hand if your strategy for success in your career is to just work harder than anybody else in Gilead Sciences. I had a low turnout for that poll. Good, you guys are smart. Because, unless you are, have an inventive mind and you can create inventions or intellectual property that no one else can do, that's probably not your winning strategy. Although it worked for Einstein. I don't think he ever had a boss. Well, with a patent office, but that doesn't count. And so, if it isn't by working harder, the way to get that progress and that bump and really feel good is through communication, collaboration, and sharing your ideas and making things better. And that turns out to be a bit of a problem, which is why, of course, Gilead has a Toastmaster Club. They secretly want you to join. In fact, we'll talk more about what G-Toast might do in the future. So we need to get better at communication because, as we know, information is not enough. There is a whole industry, which is huge, called alternative medicine, which, you can have different attitudes about it, but one way of saying, well, it's non-scientific. It may or may not be efficacious. It may be even worse. And why does that exist, and why is it so big? Well, so I can't explain all that, but what I could say to sum it up is that information is not enough. Just, knowing the science, etc., is not enough. So communication through what I've learned in the pitch is what I'm going to bring to you and share to you today. And let me just touch on a few common challenges that we all face. So oftentimes, the biggest challenge in trying to get anything done is clarity. Am I not right? Toastmasters shaking? Yes. Yes. So you have an idea, and you have this vision, and it all seems so perfect to you, and it feels great, and you go in and you're trying to explain it, and it kind of breaks down. So for example, in the pitch work that I do, I'm working with a lady called Gloria, and she was super excited, wanted to get rolling with me. She wanted to pitch her new idea for a business. And my problem was I didn't get the idea. So I met with her several times, and she kept saying things like, well, I have this idea, we're going to help children learn languages faster. And I saw this research about early learning, and I'm sure that's going to work. And what we're going to do is we're going to have this application where they log in, and they'll have pictures of their mom and dad, and they'll have their family tree, and they'll love it. And, and we'll have to find a programmer to get this code built. And So she was sort of jumping ahead for me while I'm sitting there going, yeah, Jackie, you want to, but why? What are you actually saying? It took about 4 or 5 iterations of talking to her. We finally came to a story, which was something that happened between her and her daughter. So she had like a 4-year-old daughter, and she was interested in early learning. She really wanted her daughter to thrive, but she wanted a stronger relationship with the daughter as well. And I don't know how she got this idea, but she decided she would print up flashcards of automotive logos. So she found all these logos of cars around the world and printed them out, like BMW, Toyotas, Hondas, Subarus, everything, Mercedes, and she would play this game, this flashcard game with her daughter. I don't know, the girl was maybe 3, and showing them the card and being really happy about it and talking about, putting the word with the picture. And it was an amazing experience. And then later, they're out in the world, walking through the parking lot and driving around. The daughter's like, oh, Mommy, BMW, it's Ford. And it was this amazing thing. And Gloria, telling me the story, just kind of lit up. And that was how long it took me to finally get it. It was like the 3rd or 4th hour of speaking with her, and I realized, oh, I get it. Tell me, Gloria, is this what you want to do? You want to take that really wonderful bonding, learning experience you have with your daughter that was so rich, and you want to automate it. You want to put it in an application, and so that other parents can offer the same kind of experience and do it without having to make up all the flashcards like you did. And she went, yeah, that's it. And I went, oh, well, that could be fundable now that I understand. So clarity is a huge thing. Another thing that comes up is, and I'm telling you some stories to help you get a flavor of what happens in the pitching world, because you may think, oh, that's just about people proposing to make another app for the iPhone. But way more stuff is happening. So another challenge besides clarity is being compelling. So you want to mobilize people to do something different or invest in you, or for that matter, change their practices right here at Gilead. They may think, oh, that's kind of an interesting problem, but I don't think it's bugging me that much. Maybe it's bugging you, Robert, or Jackie. Maybe it's something bugging you, but your rest of your team is like, we've always done it this way, it's not a problem. Why are you even complaining? So I had another lady who I had incredible respect for, who was born in Africa, and she was an orphan, so this is many years ago. She was adopted in the U.S. and into a Midwest family, ended up here in California. She ran an adoption agency that helped facilitate more orphans from Africa finding opportunity for quality of life here, but she realized she wasn't doing enough. And so she called me up, and I'm not charging her, I'm working for free. So we're like 2.5 hours in, and I'm getting the story of all these needs, that children in Africa have. They need education, they need shelter, they need nutrition, they need health care, they need protection. And these are all things that this lady Amber is saying, well, there's already there, but it's scattered and so on. So I'm thinking, well, so you're just going to organize it better? That's compelling? How are you, what are you bringing to this? And she got impatient with me. Amber finally just got impatient. She looked at me and she said, Roy, no one is taking care of the big picture. These children not only need protection and all these resources, they need nurturance. They need someone to care about them. Otherwise, it's so emotional for me. She said, they will not thrive. We will have a lost generation. You feel that? So that's being compelling, and the reason Jackie was compelling is because she had a vision. It took me a while to get to the bottom of it, but that's the kind of thing that actually does happen from time to time in corporations. So you could come across someone or become someone with a vision that was worth working on your message so that it really did become compelling, because after all, you guys are saving lives. And I know that because, also emotional. I'm going to get over this emotional stuff. Medicine and everything. This is hard. My youngest daughter, she's a survivor of childhood leukemia. So I know about chemists saving lives. So that's some of the flavor of pitching, and that's some of the common pitfalls of, it's not clear, it's not compelling. Another one is, it does not covering the future. So sometimes I remember being an employee in the corporate world of, you just kind of want your boss to make it better. And you say, well, why don't we just start using this other tool? That would really help me. Can you just make it happen? And they say, well, how would that play out, and how hard is it to transfer? And you say, well, can't we just try it? And that is not the language that is going to get you attention, because the people who need to approve the budget and manage the resources need a better answer. So employees, we are prone to this as employees when we kind of feel like we're just kind of doing our small bit. And also students. So I've seen a lot of students from other countries. So Europe and Asia are both sending literally plane loads of students to Silicon Valley. We are a mecca. And they've written some code and they got some slides and they're enthusiastic of building something. And it comes to the end of the slideshow and it says, and all we need is $500,000 to finish this product and go to market. And you go, I don't know. I would want to hear a little bit more before I put in $500,000. So that's another pitfall of not thinking about the future. All of these things are going to be covered when I get into the heart of lessons from the pitch. Very well. But there's one more thing we have to deal with before we launch into the sort of core material. And that is the matter of choice. You all chose to be here, which is cool, even though it was just pizza. So I'm honored by that, and thank you so much. And yet, learning to excel and really contribute in a bigger way through communication takes work. It's a longer process. I keep looking at you, Robert, because Robert told me a story about this just before the meeting started. So it's a longer process, and it may feel awkward, time-consuming. You will be doing things that are embarrassing, possibly. You know, if you join a Toastmaster club or any kind of workshop where you're building your skills. It's sort of like riding a bike. You know, the first time you rode a bike, maybe you fell over, but you were definitely wobbly and not that confident, and you kind of don't want to repeat that much. As adults, we're so confident in everything, but the missing part many times is how can we really convey ideas with power? So you have this choice. You might say, yeah, you know, I really am here for the food, thanks for the talk, but I'm just going to go do my regular thing. Or you might have, and you might not even notice this, you might have that feeling of, well, pitching, that's really associated with sales. And sales are kind of, you know, well, it's not exactly sleazy, but it could be sleazy, and I'm a professional, I'm an expert. I deal in science and facts and findings and processes, and so that's not for me. And, you know, that's okay, that's your choice. However, I encourage you to stay open to that possibility, you know, maybe I should modify or change that a little bit. I'll tell you about someone I worked with at a conservation, an organization called Sustainable Silicon Valley. And I did a workshop for those folks because they had different members that they were sponsoring to go to a bigger conference. And I met a lady who's a Stanford scientist, the ultimate expert on her field. Her project had to do with the Arctic ice. Who here has looked into the climate change situation at least a little bit? So this is pretty concerning. And if you spent much time looking into it, you would realize the Arctic ice is really important. The Arctic ice has been called the sort of refrigerator of the planet. And so it's very key, and it can also affect the heat budget, so to speak, if we don't have that white ice up there. So since I had looked into it and I heard her talking about this plan and the details, I was like, wow. However, other people might not have felt, you know, not kind of got that. Maybe they haven't looked into this as much. But I offered to help her. I gave her my card, said, please call me. You know, I'd love to work with you. She never called. And I hope she turns this around because she did a presentation, didn't get much traction. She posted a project on Indiegogo. Do you know what Indiegogo is? Yeah, so Silicon Valley, yeah. Indiegogo is where you go and post projects for some kind of startup or innovation, and you're just asking people to contribute money based on the strength of what you're offering to do and your qualifications and how you promise results. Very, very sadly, the project about the ice got 3% of its target. So it was a sad thing, but I hope she turns it around. And the key message I want you to offer to you is information is not enough. Having a worthy goal or a worthy vision by itself is not enough. We need to get some savvy. And so you have that choice, and I encourage you to really, really look inside and say, maybe it would be a good time now that I've reached this really high level of professional achievement, to go to the next step. The last thing I'll share with you, choice, is a charming movie called Holes. Who has seen that old movie, Holes? Yeah? Stanley Yelnats, you remember? And who can tell me what happens to Stanley that's unfortunate in the early part of the film? What happens to poor Stanley? You remember?
He gets arrested, right?
Stanley gets arrested. Thanks. Say that louder.
He gets arrested.
Say it even louder. We got your chin thing.
He gets arrested.
There you go. Live coaching. Stanley gets arrested. And it's the most heinous crime because he's accused of stealing from orphans. This good little, nice, mind your own business, smart, mild-mannered, what's up? So the family has a big argument, a big discussion, because what are we going to do? Stanley's going to court. And you got the uncles and the dad and other neighbors are like, well, what's our strategy? We need a lawyer. Who knows a good lawyer? Oh, how much is that going to cost? And Stanley's mother gets impatient. And she just walks into the middle of the discussion and she says, ridiculous! We don't need a lawyer. Stanley will just tell the truth. Remember what happened to Stanley after that? Yeah. You're still doing the chin thing.
Not quite. No, I don't remember. Explain.
Well, Stanley got railroaded. And he got incarcerated. So it is conceivable, based on the talent and potential each one of you have in this room, that you could be incarcerating your own career by just telling the truth, because the information is not enough. Okay, this is all preamble to the choice. I'll leave that to you. You're going to need to sit on the choice and decide what to do. Now, what are these lessons from the pitch that he keeps talking about? I'm going to write them all down on the board. I'm going to annotate it. I'm going to talk through it. And I want you to interrupt me and help clarify, because I don't know all the different functional areas that you're in. But here is what I'm going to present now is my belief in what is the strongest, best structure for the pitch, and it is also the strongest, best structure for any business proposal, which might include where the heck's the picnic going to be. It works for that too. Let me get. So I thought these were whiteboards. They're white screens, so if I wrote on those, it would be bad.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry for the folks over here. I'm going to have to use this side. Okay. Never trust other people's markers. Not a good idea. Okay. So in any presentation, naturally, when you come to the front of the room, you will have to sort of give some kind of intro. What is this about? So I've invented this clever word. Pardon me if I misspell anything here, by the way. It's just off the cuff, so just try to forgive me. It is an overview of some situation. I don't know. It could be in software. It could be in a development process. But there's some situation that the people are kind of familiar with, but maybe they haven't noticed some details. So you're going to bring out some details of, in this, someone shout out the name of a process that your group does, so I can work with that. You've got SOPs.
Yeah.
You have processes. And when I went to your website, I saw all these compounds, all these drugs, and they had a 4-step colored enunciator of what stage they were in. What do you call that thing? Phases of clinical trials. So that's a very high caliber thing. I'll bet it has lots of sub-processes in it. But let's just go with that. Phases of clinical trials. So maybe you'd have an overview statement about, in phase 2, we've been doing procedure A, B, and C, but what we realize is C is becoming obsolete, and A is becoming more important, and we need to shift resources. So that would be an observation. Ideally, in the overview, we have what I would call a rosy opportunity. So once again, forgive misspelling. If it happens, probably won't. So you can abbreviate this whole thing into this. Tell us you got something good on offer. Give us the overview and what's good about it and who is it affect, etc. This takes 20 seconds. So that's step 1. And once again, this is my outline of if you're going to pitch something to an investor or to a co-founder or to maybe you're in a contest. You got 5,000 rabid startup folk and they want to hear your idea. The overview with ideally an opportunity. The next thing that happens is you're going to discuss a problem. Or maybe it's multiple problems. So the idea of the problem is we need to understand, is there really enough bother here to change behavior? We have to send out memos, we have to retrain people, we have to re-coordinate or restructure, maybe adopt a new tool. That's a lot of bother. I want to hear about the problem. So problems are, oftentimes something is too hard, it's too expensive, or, Gilead specialty, it's non-existent. So I was very fortunate in the case of my daughter, childhood leukemia. Well, if I got leukemia, non-existent cure rate, really, for most people. Ouch. The bottom line of the problem discussion which you will need to convince people of, is the following. We are not satisfied. In terms of time, this might be 20 seconds, depending on how big your overall chunk of presentation is. This might be a minute. If it's really obvious, it might take 10 seconds, or it might take more time because you're going to point out the problem, but then you're going to explain in some detail. Another way of speaking about this, it's pain or loss, whether it's lost money or you lost employee resources, you've used something else, etc. There are multiple dimensions in this pitch. I'll try to sort of refer to some of them, and once again, I'll try to link this process into what you're incorporating in the corporation. But I literally encourage you to shout out if it's either confusing or there's a better example, or ask a question. Yes?
Too long, that's another.
Sorry, what is? Too long.
Too long.
Yeah.
Iterations of what to do.
Too long, because obviously in the field of innovation, speed is almost everything. And without speed, it doesn't matter. Thank you. Well, then what? Can you see it down here at all? Should I move? Go multiple columns here.
Yeah, multiple columns.
Multiple columns. Okay, so then you're going to come to good old number 3, and if you didn't have this stage, you wouldn't be having the conversation. It is obviously the solution. So without this, this step is just called dreaming, and this one is just called complaining. But the solution is where you offer some change, an innovation. Change makes it better. And so you will offer that change, and you will immediately hit, what you might call it, turbulence. Turbulence will be that effect in your listener's mind when they, almost subconsciously, here's the logic that goes through. We are an extremely talented company. We are highly competent. We are expert. We are experienced. And we're winners. If there were any problem for which there was a solution, we would already found it. Ha! What do you think? You're solving a problem. You're not solving. I've heard that before. It never works. So, an important part of making your solution be credible is to always answer this question: why now? And the answer is often, well, we have new information, or requirements have changed, and therefore this whole third stage part that we used to do, it's so laborious, isn't even required. Other countries don't even require this, etc. So but why now is a very important thing, but objections will come from all over the place. Many of them, you will just need to laugh and go with it because they will be possibly uninformed or they will be emotionally based. But nonetheless, you are going to be polite, you're going to answer all comers, and you need to practice handling objections. And a few other things. This has got to be the best solution. It's got to be, you've got to have some proof. Usually you could do it via comparison or analogy. I'm so sorry about the podium being in the way here. I'm going to go to another column. So this is a big sell job of your great idea or a great idea of your team possibly. And if you get through, you need a check mark on all these things to keep going. You need continual green lights. Because if you lose the audience at any one point, delivering all your material won't help. You need to go back and get the audience with you and maybe schedule another meeting. So if you get through check 3 here, you're going to get to 4, which is the market in pitching jargon. So obviously, if you're starting a new company, the market is all those folks or companies who will buy my thing, or they'll sign up for my service, and they'll pay my subscription fee. And how many of them are there? And how do I know they'll buy it? And what evidence do I have? So in the corporate world, what I would call this is simply, this is the ecosystem dynamic. Whatever the ecosystem is where this innovation will find its life, will people adopt it? If you introduce a new tool for a particular process, will people find it great to use and they can't stop asking for improvements, or will they go, oh, I hate this? Why do I have to do it this way? So this is where you need to demonstrate this magic word called traction. This term ecosystem, is that making sense to y'all? Robert's like doing this, so let me explain a little bit. Wherever you are, whatever sort of role you have in department, you have a set of people that you interact with pretty regularly. Sometimes it's rare. You know, sometimes you have people who are short period comets and long period comets, or maybe they're, lunar. But people, there's this network and this flow of information and expectations and tasks, etc. All of the things that make up being successful and what you're judged on and so forth. That is your ecosystem. And if you start behaving differently, you're going to perturb those folks. We're going to try to perturb them in a good way. So in the market, so to speak, for your innovation is your immediate ecosystem, or whatever the scope of the change you're proposing that is going to make people change. Then there's this word traction, which I love this word, and I want you raise your hand if it maybe doesn't make that much sense. What's this word traction about? Some people have different, so it's like that, scattering of hands. For me, this is I think it's a great view that would be useful to anybody, is that growing up, in cars and motorcycles and stuff, and just being a typical American kid, traction is that thing that happens when you're gassing the car, the rear wheels are spinning like mad, and the car hasn't started moving yet. And then, different processes are happening. The rubber's heating up, the engine's maybe lugging, the car's starting to get motion, but at some point, this really super nonlinear thing happens, and the tires bite, and the car just takes off like a rocket. This is what you want. This is why we use the word traction. That's what you're going for. But you need to demonstrate it. And another word that goes with traction is validation. So in the world of ordinary pitching, that would mean, we put out a beta, and we had 50 people sign up, and that was traction. But the validation was that when we went and interviewed them, 78% said that they can't wait for the next version and they want to buy it, because they told us how it worked for them and why it was good. That's validation is kind of the academic or research that is paired with traction is people actually taking action and beating a path to your door, and the validation is sort of the logic research point of view of this proves that it's a good solution. Cool. Step 4. So we saw something that was a rosy opportunity, and by the way, I'd like to get this mic right. I'd like to just point out opportunity and problem are basically the same thing. So they're just flip sides of the same coin. Every opportunity, to the extent that people don't have it yet, it's a problem. We want something, we can't get it. We're not satisfied. So you can use those back and forth. So assuming you get through here, you have a credible solution, you have a market that wants it. Then, the next step, getting tricky for me. I'm going to go here. In pitching, it's called the business, and I'm going to abbreviate. Call it the business model. So sorry for the banner here. The business model is simply a flow of resources. So obviously money, perhaps, people, and their needs, travel, all the things that need to be in place to sustain the innovation you want, the change. Super important, sustain. I don't know if I spelled it right. There's a great thing you guys have here. Do you know what that's? Why did I write HH? So I was here last Friday. Happy hour. Wow, that was awesome. I loved it. Let's take happy hour through this process. So the overview, why don't we do something to help build community and to reward our employees and let them socialize and make a stronger community? Oh, sounds like an opportunity. What the heck? We've got a cafeteria sitting there already. We've got the space to put the beer and tables. Great. Now the problem is, and what it's addressing is this problem of, we want this community, but people can't just encamp to pizza parlors or the local bar or the hamburger joint. This doesn't work. It's too inconvenient. It's too scattered. So we're just going to make that happen right here. So super. We went from not satisfied to love it. And so this is happy hour. That's the solution. I was there last week. It was mobbed. people are having fun, they're making connections, people are running all over saying hi, and getting more food, the pastry was amazing. Market validation, baby. We have so much traction for happy hour, but then we come to business model. This could happen. I hope it doesn't, but it could happen. Sometime in the future, if Gilead hits hard times, somebody in the executive suite might be going, this happy hour thing, we are spending a lot of money on that happy hour, and I'm not sure because people go there and then they have a beer or they get an idea and they don't go back to their office. We need them to work till 9 o'clock at night. What's up? This happy hour is not paying off. So happy hour might, it could become a question of the business model, which sadly would mean no more happy hour. Ouch. Like I say, I hope it doesn't happen, but this is the key point is that none of these steps can be left out. So no matter how popular and wonderful something is, if it's not sustainable, if you have to subsidize your idea, then it probably will not live long. It will be like a kind of thing that evolves, that's successful in an ecosystem until it eats all the grass, and it doesn't have any other strategies, so it's gone. For the fun of it, I'm going over here. The last step, clearing to the future. It is the ask. So it's often left out, or it's often not put into enough detail. So like the Korean students I saw recently who had some mobile app, and they said, yeah, we got this, it's really cool, people love it, it helps them find the shows to go to the rock band that they like, and we've sold several hundred tickets, and what we need is $500,000. I want more detail. So here's the short cheat sheet about the ask. That essential part without which a presentation is not a pitch, it's an ordinary presentation. So to turn it into a pitch, it has to have this part, and it consists of these things. It is what steps or what actions, what timetable is this going to take? 6 months, 3 weeks, a year, cost, benefits, and how will we measure it? Sorry about that. That was a horrible M. How will we measure it? So these, all of these elements of the ask give the investor, which is, could be an executive here at Gilead if you're proposing inside the company. Naturally, in my world, it's usually a VC or an angel. They give that person a snapshot of what you're thinking. And they're evaluating, is this person making this presentation, do they really understand their sandbox? Do they understand the resources and the steps that are needed to, in the pitching world, how much does it cost to acquire a customer, for example? Or how are you going to get this group within the company to adopt, your tool? Things like that. And this is the kind of conversation that can raise your presentation to an executive level because these are the sorts of long-range things that allow people to become executives. So when they hear people on their team talking in their own terms, they go, I like this. Tony's really coming on. Tony is getting it. He is possibly a leader. So you become a candidate for promotion. If you not only present information and maybe a proposal, but you go clear through to how likely are people to adopt this? What evidence do I have that they'll adopt it? And, if we spend enough time talking about that, here's what would be the next step. We could have this project that would take 6 months, maybe it costs $25K, but it would have these benefits, and we'll know, because here's what we're going to measure. Wow. This, you're now coming on. You're now potentially executive candidate, I think. Am I right, Robert?
That's perfect.
Yeah, so he's been around the block. So thank you. I'm really glad I got you to come. Well, so questions? Is this the dumbest thing you've ever heard? The most obvious thing? Maybe you've got a project in mind or a proposal and you're thinking, how would I do this? So I'm just curious, your thoughts. I've been talking a long time. Happy hours, it's still a long way off. Yes? It makes sense. So making sense is good. Here's a question we often ask about a plan. Is this actionable for you? So I've seen some nods. That's good. Appreciate that. And if it's actionable, have you seen something similar to this? Is it maybe a new shift or a little bit different take? I'm hoping the answer is yes, but I don't know. Yes?
So I'm curious about this benefits. How
Yeah.
do you make sure that the benefits are not what's important to you intrinsically, but important to your audience that you're speaking
Yes,
to?
thank you. Ooh, great question. Here's my belief. My belief is that if you follow the structure, and it needs to be a little bit more detail, and do your homework, so to speak, you will automatically prove that it's not just you, because, right here, other people are taking action that indicates they're interested and want to participate, and you have some kind of validation, meaning you've run some sort of test, possibly even with a paper model or something where people go, yeah, this makes sense, I want it. Or you compared it to, maybe you've done a detailed analysis comparing it to a similar initiative that some other company did or some other division did, and you say, this is how we match up. You can see it's basically a 100% match. They got results, so we have a strong case that we'll get results. So I believe the answer to your question is that if you follow this, that result falls out, to use an old software term. Thanks. Other questions, comments? Seriously, I mean, this could be like kind of interesting and the food was okay, but I don't get it. I don't know.
So I'm just trying to apply this model to
Yeah.
a research proposal, for example. And I can put all these elements into that. But I'm trying to understand the traction aspect.
Mhm.
The validation's easy. We could do a proof of concept study to say, that this solution makes sense to this problem, right? But how would you demonstrate traction?
So traction for a research proposal. So we are at the low oxygen level fringe of even knowledge, right? So how many people on Earth, literally, might be a few hundred, can even understand the details? Is that fair enough?
That's fair enough, yeah.
So how do you demonstrate traction with that? I don't know, make something up quick, Roy. So you have colleagues, and you have colleagues who are doing, and so, not colleagues necessarily work, but you have professional scientific colleagues around the world. You read journals. So you're sort of up on what are maybe the best minds or the most interesting lines of research. What are people following? And then there's a rationale for why they're following that. They don't just do like, I'm really, really curious about the details of, how does chlorophyll, or how do plants do that photosynthesis thing? Oh, I gotta research that. Well, usually you don't get funding for that statement. You get funding for here's what we could potentially accomplish. So you might, if you come to the lower levels of those colleagues around the world who are nearby, in your neighborhood, and find what their rationales are, you might be able to import, so to speak, their credibility and their clout into your proposal. Because you're saying, hey, look, these guys over here in Europe, this consortium over here, they're researching it because they're looking to get to the same place. So we know that we're not the only people who think this. So that's a kind of traction, I believe. Traction means group consensus or group interest, to the point of, moving and doing things. Fair?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah?
The structure of the information makes a lot of sense, but thinking about how you actually convey the information, would you suggest one method over another versus like email or in person or a pitch deck?
I would totally say in person.
And would you say with a presentation attached to that, or?
Yes, and be careful. So you would do a presentation, a PowerPoint, because it's expected and because it's good at some things. However, you're the pitch, you're the message. So this is super, super important for anyone who wants to do speaking. They're not going to buy the PowerPoint, they're not going to buy the bullet points, they're buying you. And so if you are a master of your PowerPoints and you don't need to turn around to read them, but you just put the highlights, do it that way. But having a living, breathing, intelligent human say all this stuff and have command of it is extremely compelling. That's my belief. So folks, I see that the time is unwinding a little bit, and I apologize. I'd love to go longer. I do want to share a story that bears on my belief in this. So doing this kind of pitch coaching for years and years, I have come to this structure, which I recommend for everyone. There are elaborations. In the pitching world, there's something called the headline, for example. So if you have, a deal with Macy's, you're in the retail space and Macy's wants to try you out. Wow. Or if you truly have Nobel laureates on your staff who've invented some incredible breakthrough, or if you've got, what else would be really, really cool? Technical prowess, you've got famous names. But maybe you've got amazing viral appeal. So 500,000 people signed up in the first 3 weeks. Whatever that astounding thing is, I call those a headline, that would be inserted right after the overview. Because when people see those credibility factors, it changes the whole lens through which they see the rest. you're now suddenly more credible, they pay more attention, etc. So that's just, can be elaborated, and I'd love to share more. I hope GTOS will invite me back. There is another story that I brief want to share that's a personal nature of why I think this kind of structure or any good structure helps you be successful. So a few years ago, I was on the verge of, do I want to do this speaking presentation training thing? Maybe I just fade away in the software world. Write some coding's fun, it's fine. And so I went to a big training down in LA. It's outside of the Toastmaster geek world for sure. It was put on by a female comedian. But it was about doing keynote speaking, which Toastmasters will be aware that keynote speech is not something you kind of do on your first week. It's a kind of a bigger deal. And we were there on this 3-day workshop, working through all this stuff, and there's Hollywood people around. We literally had like actors that you'd seen on famous shows come and do shticks for us. It was, wow. So I'm kind of a little, And one exercise was, okay, you're going to get in a team and do a keynote. You're going to build a keynote. I don't know. So, of course, I'm going along. I'm paid for the training. There we are. We have a team of like 5 or 6 people. And we have this formula for how to build a keynote. And we work on this for like 20 minutes, and then it's time to get up and deliver it. Somehow everyone started looking at me. That ever happened to you? Hey, really? I don't know. But then you kind of feel like, well, dang it, yeah, I could do this. So I got a little bit of that dang it thing. And what happened is, this keynote killed. And you know what a mic runner is at an event? People know what a mic runner is? It's the person who runs around and, let's say, yeah, we got a mic runner. I'm just a mic runner. So this is what the event was like. The mic runner there has actually made national ads and been in Showtime series. This is how sort of, and I'm like, oh God, these people, this is not Toastmasters anymore. So I got up and delivered, and it killed, and they're giving, even the mic runner lady, the actress, is, oh wow, that was amazing. So guess what the topic, you're not going to guess, but the topic was delivered to us. It was oatmeal. Oatmeal. There's a lot of things you don't realize about oatmeal. I mean, we all know about the familiar problem and the challenge of oatmeal in the microwave. But that's serious, because explosions, you could have, steam, tremendous heat, energy, bad stuff. Oatmeal can also make or break families. It's a very loving, comforting dish, but in the wrong hands, you can put in people's faces. So there's a lot of things about oatmeal that can be uncovered. NASA has an oatmeal project. It's mostly black ops, but they're interested in its potential. And there's an oatmeal museum in North Dakota. These were all things that came out in the keynote. And so I'm leaving this event with all that praise and kind of good feeling. Like, how did that happen? I don't do oatmeal, and I don't feel like, I don't do it how to do a keynote. But what I realized is, we had the structure. I want to have more people have this experience. So this is the structure. This is my way of trying to get back with a structure which will empower you. And this is the notes from the oatmeal keynote that killed, according to the Hollywood lady. We filled it all out in blue, and I went up and just went for it. So my wish for you is that you'll sign on with GTOAST. In fact, given that budget, I wonder if there might not be a GTOAST 2 coming along, because I know you're stacked up with speakers. Right, Taggy?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Oh, you guys, you can attest to that. What I also wish for you is to let this kind of percolate in your mind, look around, maybe go to some pitch events, think about possibly something that my Toastmaster Club does. We have a pitch practice day 4 times a year. And every month, we replace table topics with pitch practice. Now, you could modify it and customize it to be more of a corporate style. You could call it, if you want to use the word pitch, call it innovation presentation practice. Something like that. That moves things forward and creates an arrow-shaped template for people to really succeed. Well, thank you so much for having me today. Always useful. I love to chat with you.
Thank you, Ryan. I hope everyone could get something out of the presentation today. And then including yourself, Roy. That's why I'm presenting you this gift on behalf of GTOAST.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's great.
So my last words for all the audience here, if you are interested in participating or joining GTOAST, just come